Hello students, today's our topic is material costing, yield analysis, markup policy. So under this objectives are material costing, about the definition, advantages and how to improve material costing. Yield analysis, definition, formula and how it is useful in the production. Markup policy, definition, how to implement markup policy in the restaurants. So first we will be seeing about the material costing. Materials cost is one of the important elements of the cost of food product. It continues a substantial proportion of the total cost of the production. For material cost control purposes, it is very essential to know the important aspects of material control and material purchase control. So what is the meaning of materials? The term materials refers to all commodities or components which are consumed in the process of food manufacture. The materials may be classified into direct materials and indirect materials. Direct materials form part of the finished products. They can be easily identified with a particular cost unit. Example, cotton used in textile mills, timber used in furniture industries. Indirect materials indirectly used for conversion from raw materials into finished products. They cannot be easily identified with a particular cost unit. For example, spare parts, tools, nails, lubrications, etc. Materials are further classified on the basis of the nature which have to be used, such as raw materials. Example for this are rubber, timber, steel, etc. Components, examples, instruments. Consumable stores, example, cotton, waste, brushes. Maintenance materials, examples, spare parts. Tools, example, jigs and fixtures. Materials control may be defined as the systemic control over the procurement, storage and usage of materials so as to maintain an even flow of materials at the time, avoiding excessive investment in inventories. From the above definition, it can be derived the following important aspects. To ensure the smooth flow of the production without interruptions. Prevention of excessive investments in materials stock. Functions of materials control. The following are the important functions involved in the material controls in order to achieve the objectives of the store department. First one is purchasing of materials. Next one is receiving of materials. Next, inspection of materials. Next one is storage of materials. Next, issue of materials. Next one is maintenance of store records. Last one is stock audit, objectives of store control. Advantages of materials control. First one under this is it ensures continuous flow of production. Next point, there is maximum utilization of stores resources. It facilitates economy of buying. It ensures optimum investments in inventories. There is possibility of reduction of loss of theft, leakage, obsolescence, etc. It minimizes cost of materials during purchase, storage and issue of materials. It facilitates effective information system to management. Materials purchase control. Materials purchase is one of the important functions of store department. The basic objectives of the material purchasing are to ensure continuous supply of raw materials to production and maximum reduction of cost product. In other words, the chief aim of purchasing is to ensure not only to procure the raw material at the lowest price but to reduce the cost of the finished product. In order to achieve the above said objectives, the following aspects and procedure should be adapted. Organization of purchasing. Materials may be purchased based on the size of the concern, nature of materials to be used, nature of operations and management policies, etc. A large company will have a separate purchase department, while a small firm, on the other hand, may have all functions including purchasing carried out by the owner himself. Materials may be purchased through centralized organization or decentralized organization. Centralized organization. Under this system, all the materials purchased are centralized. Accordingly, all type of materials are purchased through one purchase department. The following are the advantages of centralized purchasing. Cheaper rate and favorable trade discounts are possible because of bulk purchasing. It ensures right quality and quantity because of specialized personnels. Buying and carrying cost can be reduced because of bulk purchasing. Blocking of funds in inventories can be avoided. Effective material purchase control is possible. Decentralized purchasing. In this, each department is authorized to make its own purchase. This system is suited where different production units are located at different places far away from each other. The material procurement is done by different purchase departments. Now we will see that how to improve material costs in food business economy. Raw material costs are an important item in the budget for a restaurant or food industries. Finding the best suppliers with good prices is worth spending time on. But once it is done, there may be a whole range of situations that affect the cost of raw materials. So, some we can not influence, that the general price, weather and wind also affect the cost of raw materials. Example, frost at the wrong time doing that harvest will be smaller and the prices go up. However, we can control the internal factors but that affect the raw material cost. Internal factors that affect the cost of raw material is, for example, how to deal with the food, how much is to be, how much is thrown away. The storage also affects the sustainability. A sad thing that may also affect commodity cost negatively. If there is theft of food in the staff circuit, if profit margin falls, it can also be a sign that the cost of raw materials need to be reviewed. Below are 8 possible reasons why the cost of raw materials may increase and also suggestions for how to handle these worries. First one is unbalanced menu. To keep a reasonable level of profit on the menu, we need to balance the budget and expensive ingredients together. Example, pasta and potatoes involves low raw material costs. Seafood and fine cuts of beef and other type meats pull up commodity costs. Raw material cost should be at about 30 to 35% of the menu price. The price of the final law will not only cover the raw material cost but also we have to pay the person who prepares the food, on serving the customer, at the desk and the cleaning up, all from payroll to the electric bill to be covered by it. So, into the dishes on the menu, and as it said, it should be enough for the profit margin also. Next one is theft. This is not fun to talk about, but it should be aware that employees can steal from the person, that is management. One way to try to curb this is to establish a system where the raw materials can be tracked with the business. Example, manual tallying with signature from the time they are delivered until they are sold as finished dishes to a guest. Sure, it sounds complicated, but it should be good way to discourage staff from picking to the commodities or stop itself expensive groceries. An eye on raw materials costs also means that also true of the dining room and the kitchen counts. So next one is no proper eye on portion sizes. One reason that franchise restaurants often go well is that they have an eye on portion sizes. The same portion sizes applies regardless of where the restaurant is located. Knowing in advance what they are getting enjoyed by guests, keeping the same size for each serving continuously is a way to keep track of raw material costs and ensure profit margin. Waste and food waste. Avoid food waste both because of ignorance and overflowed laziness. To use as much as the raw material as possible can increase profits and minimum entry of raw material costs. For example, use of trimmings from nut flash flicker and as an ingredient in skewers and sell as a special entrance. Cook a delicious broth of chicken bones and vegetable scraps instead of throwing them away. A good cook knows just how to use all parts of the ingredients into the smallest stem and thus have minimum food spillage or spoilage. Buy food for own household. As a restaurant owner, he or she may be tempted to skip the purchases in regular grocery stores for the private use. It is easy to use food from the restaurant kitchen and cheaper it is also. But remember, if the person take home a bag of chicken breast instead of using them in the restaurant, it actually affects the count of raw material costs and hence profits, especially if the person do it regularly. If the person want to take advantage of discounted large purchases to restaurant, always note that you are using the private and repay it to the business. Next one is poorly trained staff. If the cook who burns the food or destroying materials otherwise, it will affect the performance in the long term. A drop here and there, it cannot be seen directly but affects negatively in the form of increased raw material costs in the long run. The same applies if an employee does not take full responsibility for the correct portion size. Similarly, if staff are careless, first in, first out principle in terms of both fresh and pantry goods, the furthest out on a shelf must not be forgotten. Many drops make a notoriously large on read higher raw material costs. Next one is poor track of accounts. Tuning is always incoming invoices for cost of raw materials from the supplier. Keep track of delivery notes which come with the goods. Put them in a binder for each supplier so anybody can notice that how where they are. Always keep invoices and receipts for payments so that we can notice where the dry land if it is with any conflict with a supplier. If we are not going to do this one, then we must find a reliable employee who can help the person. Last one is using only a supplier. Do not be afraid to select different providers. To build good relationships with several distributors may affect the cost of raw materials positively. Even if they prefer a particular supplier, it does not hurt to find out what others charge and compare prices. Negotiate with the provider ago. If do not ask, you can get either no response. Now we will see about the yield analysis. Mass losses during processing will result in a decrease of production yield. Losses can be separated in wanted and unwanted losses. Wanted losses are necessary to transform raw material into desired final products. Unwanted losses will result in additional raw material usage and generate additional waste and will therefore put the company's profit under pressure. The paper categories mass loss that affect production yield and describes a generic model that can be used to calculate production efficiency. Increasing production efficiency is the basis for improvement and cost cutting. The costs of raw material are the major part of the overall business costs. The overall business costs are defined as the total of all running and capital costs, including marketing, sales, and overhead costs. Production yield can be seen as a transformation coefficient that can be calculated out of produced quantity of end product and amount of basic raw material needed. Other material input that includes ingredients and other additions, and other output that includes waste, animal feed, etc. are not included. For process with multiple end products or valuable co-products, the production yield per type of product should be calculated. Here is the formula which you can see. Py is equal to MFP, 100 divided by MRM. Py means production yield. MFP means mass of final product, that is in kg. MRM means mass of clean raw material, that is also in kgs. R means direct reused component. Overall production yield can be calculated by summation of individual yield values. In practice, it is often possible to calculate the production yield of the factory because it is a simple and straightforward factor to calculate. Because raw material costs are high in comparison to other costs. A logical question is that what is the maximum possible production yield with respect to the raw material quality and the end product specifications? This question is often hard to answer and needs further research and development of a computer model. Most processors do not have a computer model to predict the maximum possible production yield as appeared from the interviews. It can be used to predict the amount of unwanted mass loss and the equivalent of raw material that is needed additionally by way of this formula. Yi is equal to Py divided by Py minus MAX. Yi means yield index, Py means production yield, Py minus max, that means maximum possible production yield. The advantages of yield index is that it is independent of the quality of raw material used. Because the yield index is a dimensional figure, if the quality of the raw material is better, the actual yield will be higher, but also the maximum possible yield. Next, we will see about the raw material. The basic raw materials for food industry can be separated into two categories. Solid materials such as animals, eggs, nuts, cereals, vegetables, fruits, etc. Liquids such as milk and water. Solid materials may differ in shape, size, structure, composition, defects, etc., which will influence the production yield. In liquids, the composition is the key factor. Diseases and infection of the raw material will also affect the production yield. Transport and storage losses prior to processing, during loading, transport from supplier to the factory, and during storage at the factory, unwanted losses can occur due to the climate circumstances that includes frost, rainfall, etc., damages, biological reactions and time. Surface losses. Many raw materials contain a surface, that is peel, skin, feathers, rind, shell, bran of cereals, etc., that must be removed during processing. The removal of this surface is essential. The equipment used for surface removal usually removes also a part of good material, which will create unwanted mass loss. Internal losses. Product own components that are inside the raw material itself and are not suitable for human consumption must be removed. A stone of a cherry can be seen as an example. The process equipment for these operations removes mostly also a certain part of good material, which will create unwanted mass loss. Example, poultry. The blood loss during processing is about 4% of the live weight. Losses during size reduction and enlargement. During size reduction, that includes cutting, breaking, crushing, trimming, milling, grinding, shredding, homogenization, expression, etc. And size enlargement includes granulation, flocculation, etc. Wanted and unwanted mass losses occur, which will create an additional drop in yield. Example, in the French fries industry, peeled potatoes are cut into strips by a water knife system. During cutting, cell tissue adjacent to the knife blades is damaged and cell content is completely lost. This loss varies between 2 to 12% depending on the cut size, cutting velocity, knife assembly, knife fouling, wear out and tissue characteristics based on incoming potatoes into the cutting system. Losses during separation and sorting operations. Separation and sorting operations achieve their objective by the creation of two or more coexisting zones. These zones can be separated due to differences in shape, size, density, weight, structure, solubility, volatility, color, magnetism, electrical conductivity, ionic charge, conductivity, pressure, mobility, concentration or surface tension. During separation and sorting process, wanted and unwanted losses will occur. Unwanted losses will influence the yield index negatively because water and diffusion losses are so common in food processing. They will be discussed separately. Losses during packaging. Packaging is an important part of all food processing operations. Accurate filling is very important to ensure compliance with fill weight legislation and to prevent overfilling. Overfilling is unwanted and can be seen as a giveaway effect and will result in a decrease of production yield. Most of the processors measure the mass of end products as the number of packed items times the target weight. Example, French fries. The packaging loss due to overfill is about 0.1 to 0.25% of the final product. Reuse of the products. During the transformation process from raw materials into the final product, several losses will occur. Part or parts of the lost or rejected materials, that is wanted and unwanted, are suitable for reuse. The reuse of the products can lead directly or indirectly to an increase in the production yield. Directly means that the reused product is added back to the same production line where it comes from. Indirectly means that it is used for other production process. The production yield is only influenced by direct reuse because it reduces the overall mass losses of that particular production process. Indirect reuse influences the production yield of other process and will increase the overall production yield of a company. The same example is French fries. The reject of the sorting process is used to make co-products like potato flakes. So now we will see about the markup policy. Markup is the difference between the cost of a good or service and its selling price. A markup is added onto the total cost incurred by the producer of a good or service in order to cover the costs of doing business and create a profit. Retail markup is commonly calculated as the difference between wholesale price and retail price as a percentage of wholesale. Price determination. Profit. Assume sale price is 2500, product cost is 2000. Profit is equal to sale price minus cost. So profit is equal to 2500 minus 2000. So profit is equal to 500. How to set prices with a markup formula for restaurants? Restaurant profit is created from the difference between menu prices and the cost for ingredients, overhead expenses and labor. Establishing a menu price for entries that drives customer purchases but allows a healthy profit. Gather the recipes for each menu item. Next is determine the price for every ingredient in all recipes specific to the quantity required. Create a pricing sheet for each menu item. Add all the standard monthly expenses. Determine the average number of customers that come to the restaurant. Divide the total monthly expense. Add the per customer expense. Determine the percentage of the profit that want to take on each item. Set menu prices. Update pricing sheets. So, we can conclude with the materials cost is the one of the most important elements of the cost of food product. Materials control may be defined as the systemic control over the procurement, storage and usage of materials so as to maintain an even flow of materials and at the same time avoiding excessive investment in inventories. Mass loss during processing will result in a decrease of production yield. Markup is the difference between the cost of a good or service and its selling price. A markup is added onto the total cost incurred by the producer of a good or service in order to cover the costs of doing business and create a profit. Thank you, students.